multilateralism generally, and on this matter of a rule-based global order. One, Kenya has been very clear on the inviolability of boundaries, which is also a core value and principle that underpins the United Nations itself, that boundaries are inviolable. Sovereignty is sanctified, and that really is the position our country holds, and a position that I personally, both as an attorney and a practitioner within this field, holds dear, that we must continue to uphold the inviolability of boundaries, of borders, and protect the sanctity of sovereignty. Of course, threats will always confront humanity, and that is why we have measures, including organizations like the UN, to confront those challenges, but we must remain firm that the moment you allow interference with these two principles unabated, inviolability of borders and the sanctity of sovereignty, then you will throw the global order into chaos, total chaos. The reason why the League of Nations collapsed before the world was thrown into the Second World War was because of half-hearted measures to stand up to the values that the world had come together to uphold under the League of Nations. The United Nations, as a successor to the League of Nations, has been very clear in not walking the path that the League of Nations walked. And that means that then those who bear responsibility, and this includes the UN Security Council, where Kenya has served recently, and I'm very proud, Honorable Chair, that while at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I played a very central role in the campaign that led Kenya's election as a member of the UN Security Council. The UN Security Council bears a critical role in upholding these values and these principles. All members through the UN General Assembly and the various agencies must remain faithful to these principles. And if confirmed, if approved for this role, I certainly, Honorable Chair, would make my contribution in supporting the position of our country and supporting the values and principles that make the UN the bulwark against the threats that the Honorable Hassan has brought to our attention. You have also asked about the architecture of the UN office in Nairobi, and have drawn our attention to the fact that we actually have a what you can call double mission at Gigiri. The mission we call UNEP, handling the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, and the UN office in Nairobi, UNON. And then you have the mission assigned to UN Habitat. Allow me, Honorable Chair, with your permission, to refer this Honorable Committee to a report you have previously prepared. And I had occasion to look at that report. I believe you released that report in 2023 or thereabouts, which draws attention to this issue. And I want to say that I wholeheartedly agree with this committee on the position you have taken, that number one, we need to harmonize Kenya's presence at the UN office in Nairobi, and as much as possible, streamline the operations of that place. It would be neater, it would be more affordable, it would be administratively more harmonious if you had a single mission. Indeed, if you look at the diplomatic presence of pretty much all the countries accredited to this capital, and by extension to Gigiri, they run a unified mission. you look at most of them, they run a unified mission, where you have one ambassador representing their country to the government of Kenya, and also to UNON, UNEP, and UN Habitat. In the fullness of time, it may be useful and prudent for Kenya to explore the same path. Ultimately, it would save on cost, and it would also cut a lot of red tape that come with running a double mission. And perhaps the committee might want to urge the parent ministry, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs, to follow through on the recommendation that the committee has made. I place myself available in the event that I'm confirmed for this position. I would make myself available to contribute my thoughts on this matter towards a position that would be most beneficial to the country. Honorable Hassan has also asked me whether I feel demoted, whether I feel, this is quite interesting. You know, Honorable Chair, when I first appeared here in this same hall, sitting at this same chair in October 2022, and I was being vetted for the position of Cabinet Secretary. Honorable Hassan, you may want to know that a question was posed to me during that vetting on whether I felt I had been sent to the wrong ministry. Because the general sentiment in the committee at that time was that I should have been sent to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And the question was posed to me as to how I would find motivation, because I had just come from the foreign space. I had served at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I had just completed my task as head of international relations for our presidential candidate. And so it was almost expected that I would be named Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs. But I assured the committee at that time that I come from the school of thought best exemplified by the words of Martin Luther King, the immortal words of Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King says that if it is your commission to be a street sweeper, that is what God has ordained that you do with your life. Sweep the street so well that even the hosts of heaven would have no choice but stop and wonder and marvel and say, behold, there lives a street sweeper here. Who sweeps streets so well? It reminds me of the poetry of Shakespeare, the music of Beethoven, and the creativity of Michelangelo. That must be quite a street sweeper. That philosophy is about grasping any task handed to you and giving it your all. That is my philosophy. And so see, I was sent to the Ministry of Sports, and I believe that in less than 2 years, I elevated that ministry to one of the most phenomenal ministries in this country. Today, all talk in Kenya is about CHAN, AFCON, Talanta Sports City. I sit back and say, behold, what a street sweeper. The street sweeper who brought CHAN, who brought AFCON, who brought Talanta Sports City. And I am just happy that I had the opportunity to serve in that space and put my best foot forward and have helped my country to rise to a certain level in that space. So, am I feeling like I might struggle to reset my sails, Honorable Chair? Honorable Chair, the United Nations is the collective conscience of humanity. This is where the world converges to find solutions to the most phenomenal challenges of peace and security, challenges of poverty and hunger, challenges of climate change and environmental degradation. The UN is the focal point of finding solutions to these challenges for humanity. The United Nations office in Nairobi is only one of only four offices that coordinates operations of the UN globally. You have Nairobi, you have Geneva, you have Vienna, you have New York. So it is a critical diplomatic station, absolutely critical. The United Nations Environmental Programme, or UNEP, today is seized off the most critical agenda to address what is an existential threat to humanity. Would I consider being handed an assignment to represent Kenya in that space a demotion? No. I would consider it a reassignment to a different role, a different responsibility. I believe I'm almost tailor-made for this position, given my learning, my intellectual capacity, my experience, my exposure, my globalness. I believe that this is a role that I would execute very well. I would not require any extra motivation because of what I believe the UN and UNEP to be, to the world and to the country. And let me also disclose to you, Honorable Chair, and the committee and the public, that I consider it to have been honorable and respectful and protocol that His Excellency the President invited me to a sitting to discuss this responsibility before it was made public, which I want to thank His Excellency the President for that. And I know exactly what His Excellency the President expects of me in that role because he personally explained it to me. I know where it ranks in his agenda and in the delivery of our better dream, and I believe that it is a task I would sufficiently execute, Honorable Chair, given the opportunity. Chair, Honorable Wangari, my friend, my colleague, has asked me about my names. Those are just my names. But I prefer to use the names I inherited from my grandfather. My grandfather was called Ababu Tera Wecheche. Okay? So I carry his names. So ideally, actually, I find a lot of pride in carrying the names of my grandfather because in those names I find his spirit and the spirit of the lineage that I carry. And so Ababu Namwamba, Ababu is the name I carry from my grandfather. Namwamba is the name I carry from the family lineage, which is a long, large family. And the other names are given names, including baptismal names. You have asked a critical question, Mheshimiwa, about UNEP being integrated in our Kenyan agenda. And I couldn't agree more with you that even where I'm seated myself, I find UNEP and UNON a bit removed, a bit remote from what happens in this country. You go to Geneva and you see how the United Nations office in Geneva, how integrated it is in the soul of Switzerland. You find the same in Austria with the work of the UN office in Vienna. And certainly the work of the UN headquarters in New York is a critical component of the work of the US government. this committee may want to note that even in the nomination of what they call the U.S. ambassador to the UN, it's a critical role. It's a very high-level position, the manner in which the U.S. picks their representative to the UN. And so we need to elevate, we need to hoist higher the stature of Gigiri, both in terms of the mission there, the kind of citizens we send to populate that space, and the agenda that as a country, because at the end of the day, Honorable Chair, even in the interaction between nations, the driving force is strategic national interest. And we must ask ourselves, we host UNEP, we host UN Habitat, we host UNON. What is our strategic national interest as a country? And certainly, given the opportunity, Honorable Wangari, through Honorable Chair, I would want to contribute to that. I would want to contribute to elevating the stature of Gigiri and integrating the work of UNEP and the work that goes on at UNON in what goes on in the rest of the country. So that when we are implementing better, we should be able to join dots between the programs of better and what goes on in Gigiri. Then we'll make it more relevant, and even the people of Kenya will feel the value of hosting these important offices. You have also asked me, I have served as Minister for Youth Affairs and Sports twice, and you have asked me what I would consider my most important contribution. I would name just two. The first is that when I first served in the Kibaki administration, I was the first minister in the history of this country to enact legislation to govern that whole space of sports and youth. And I remember on the 15th day of January 2013, as we headed towards the elections of that year, I stood on the floor of this house in the main chamber to move myself, because at that time you are both minister and member of parliament. I stood on the floor of the house to move the bill that has come to be called the Sports Act, which has really contributed to consolidating that space and giving it form, giving it substance. Lately, I would say that in my last posting, I have succeeded to elevate the stature of this space. And because you see, when you are sent to the Ministry of Sports and Youth Affairs, and as I was asked during my vetting at that time, it appeared like it was a second generation ministry. But in the brief period that I have been in that ministry, I have succeeded to elevate the stature of that ministry and put in place some significant measures to focus on talents as an economic resource. Talents as an economic resource. And that this country can actually exploit the talents of our young people to make very serious contributions to the economic development of our country, to generate employment. And you can see in my time there was very deliberate investment in infrastructure. I mentioned the Talanta Stadium, the work that is being finished at Kasarani, Nyayo, all that was part of investing in infrastructure. We invested in identification of talents through the Talanta Hela program. Today when you see our girls playing at the World Cup, our boys going to AFCON, our under-20 boys, it is a product, fruits of that effort. So I can say that for the time I have had opportunity to serve in that space, I have made very substantive contributions. Honorable Kandiye, you also posed 3 questions to me. The third question is how UNEP can help with the challenges of the environment in our cities, in our major towns. And I'll just go back to the answer I have already given, that Kenyans need to feel the presence of UNEP and UNON more substantively. And I want to be that, when you are in this position, you have the privilege of being an ambassador who sits at home. because ordinarily ambassadors serve away from home. But now it's foreign in terms of Gigiri being a foreign space, but you're also domestic because you're at home. I want ambassadors serve away from home. But now it's foreign in terms of Gigiri being a foreign space, but you're also domestic because you're at home. I want